And as you know, beyond my work as a political activist and working on media and being the president of the Independence Institute, I've had a long and illustrious career as a poet laureate. And I want to, no. Shawn Welcome is with us. Shawn, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Now, I'm curious to talk to you about this, and this is going to be hard because I don't understand your world, and that's the world of poetry and the world of performance art. Now, I used to do stage lighting, and I was around a lot of creative people, and they all pretty much annoyed me all the time.
Okay.
But I'm trying to think, what makes you tick on this? You came out for something that was put on last week called the Western Conservative Summit.
Correct.
And you put on a great presentation. Tell me why you are a gospel-leaning, almost conservative-leaning poet. You're an iconoclast. What is this? So tell me a little bit about it. What do you do? How do you describe what you do?
I do performance poetry, which is basically 3-minute monologues, just for the sake of people listening, to understand that, memorized pieces or read pieces that are more performed as opposed to read in a, prose type style. So what I do is I create pieces that range from love to the gospel to all kinds of topics.
Just you and me. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You do this just to pick up chicks. 'Cause women love this crap, right? How many poems have you written for women?
None.
Oh, come on.
None.
Come
No.
on.
I haven't written any pieces specific for women. After I got married, I did write a love poem for my wife called Supermodel, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. By the way, that was a great catch, because if she found out it was about the other woman, it would have been really bad. So why is it? I went to a liberal arts school. I remember all the famous poets that you're supposed to study, and as soon as I studied them, I quickly forgot them. Dante's Inferno and all sorts of good stuff. Is there really a role for modern poetry?
A role in our society here?
I mean,
absolutely.
Why?
I don't think just because you do something on a big stage makes it valid. There's a ton of open mics that are local, and there's ways to impact a generation and a culture in ways that aren't standard. And so there's definitely a role for poets in our society. I believe that with every bone in my body.
I believe there's a role for poets as well. They're mostly waiters. And I think that, and I like to eat, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
What makes a good poem for you?
What makes a good poem for me?
Yeah.
When I feel challenged and provoked and inspired, kind of all in the same vein. I think that is something that somebody put a lot of thought into, and whether I agree with that piece or not, it does something for me. It'll either help polarize where I am on whatever it is that they're talking about, or agree with them and thank them for putting it in such a well put together.
Tell me a little bit about the crossover here between your poetry and politics. The idea that the Western Conservative Summit, which comes out of the Colorado Christian University, would fly you in to share what you do with a large audience, almost completely white audience, to talk about this. What's the mutual attraction there? What is different about what you do? Because I knew Allen Ginsberg, and let me tell you, they would not bring Allen Ginsberg in.
Okay, that's a really good question. What's the crossover? I think because of the fact that I'm willing to do poems that I guess would be non-traditional in a, I don't know how to word it. It's like
your poems have a lot of faith-based stuff to them.
Correct.
So you're evangelical Christian,
yes,
right? And so it comes out in the poetry.
Right.
All right. Is there any sort of political leaning that comes out of there too? Because I have a sense some pops out, and I've heard you do it before.
Okay.
So there's I don't want to say there's a political side to
right,
it, but there's certainly an overtone to a political philosophy.
Right. Well, anybody who listens to me wouldn't be able to draw out of me that I'm a far left person. They wouldn't be able to pull that out of me. And so what that leaves is that I would be someone that is on the right, according to my poems, because they are extremely faith-based. So I think that's kind of where it would, smell that way. You know what I mean? But I'm not one that would claim any one particular side, although my views tend to line up more with conservative views. So I think the crossover, and I'm kind of thinking of the question as you were saying it, is that people who have faith-based poems or art tend to be timid and quiet and just kind of, I don't know what people are going to think about me or whatever. And with me, it's the opposite. I'm willing to be out there and create good art, good poetry that that I don't particularly care what the backlash is from anyone. You know what I'm saying?
So I tell you what, why don't we jump into it? Give me one of your poems. You surprised me with what you like. Afterwards, I've got this thing I wrote about this guy from Nantucket, and we can. Okay. No, actually, you go ahead.
I'll do half a poem. I know we're kind of short on the interview here. The title of this poem is called Logophilia, and it means like the love of words and word games kind of thing. So I'll do the halfway into that to the end. I think that'll kind of give us an overview of what I do. All right? It goes, even if you don't believe in them, it's difficult to deny that words come alive. God's spoken word had an ultrasound that sent the Son of Man on a sonogram, impregnated the globe as foretold. There's life in there, eyes and ears, limbs and chests. Yes, God's word became flesh and dwelt among us like Hall of Famers who become faceless when famous has run its course, but legacy remains. No word of his remains. Words remain homeless of sentences to sleep in. No apostrophe pillows, no syntax blankets. Nothing can describe the power of words, whichever way you word it. But it's worth watching, like Widget the World Watcher. But that's before your time is ticking by. How many grains of sand are left in your sand clock of glass? Right before the last grain falls, read, absorb, teach, talk if at all possible. Voices is a sight for sore ears in a world of words. No form is more important than the other. This is for poetry. This is for kingdom, for the resilience of writers. This is for word lovers.
That ain't bad.
Thank you.
I like. All right, help me. That's close. Is there something close to urban rap? Is there a crossover? Because you're not reading off of a page. You're not. There's no Walt Whitman stuff. So it's almost performance. When does it change?
Well, I started out doing rap. I mean, it was more a cappella raps. I loved the, communicating lyrics and rhymes with no beat. I thought that was just the awesome form. It was very raw. It was very street. And my senior year in high school, I lived in Brooklyn at the time. I got a lot of inspiration there. And so over time, when I saw performance poetry or spoken word in competitions, it was very similar to that, but without so much of the rhyme. And I love storytelling, and I love the different styles of performing. I just gravitated to it, and then I ended up competing, and then going to open mics, and then going to national competition, and I did that for several years, and then I ended up ranking, and just kind of snowballed into this thing.
Ranking? Wait, are you telling me there's like an NFL for poets? There's some sort of tournament that goes on. There's a U.S. Masters tournament for poets.
There's a thing called National Poetry Slam that goes on every year, where poets from all over the country come together, and then they compete with their poems. Yeah. And
they compete with their poems.
Yeah, it's called Poetry Slam. Yeah,
how do you cheat in that?
You use props. That's a deduction there. You go over 3 minutes and 10 seconds. That's a deduction. Yeah, some serious rules.
And what's the prize?
Sometimes cash, $2,000 cash. I think for the team, like people send their cities. Orlando, Chicago, New York has a couple teams. Things like that.
Beyond doing poetry, though, you spend a lot of time with young kids.
Yes.
Tell me about that part of it. Does poetry actually resonate with children? Because we live in a video age. What you're doing, man, it could impress people 100 years ago, but we've gotten past that.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I do work with young people. I'm a student counselor at 2 local high schools back where I live in Orlando. And, you know, poetry is really a bridge to open up communication, because just like you did earlier, they closely associate it with rap or something that they're familiar with. So it's like, oh, you know, Mr. Welcome's cool or whatever. And then you begin to open up those lines of communication, and you can teach them whatever you want to teach them after that point, once they see that you're somewhat on their level, quote unquote. You know what I mean? And I started doing this at a local jail with some poet friends of mine.
You were doing time, I assume?
No, I was not doing time. I wasn't doing time.
Although I like the idea of putting poets in jail. I think there's something
hilarious. Devil's advocate, right? That's your job, right? All right. So so I went into the youth offenders area, and it worked great, man. Me and my friends would perform, and they would just begin to open up, and we were able to teach life skills and talk about decision making, and it's a powerful tool. Just like I said in that poem, it's powerful beyond anyone could really imagine.
If you grew up in an urban area, I can't imagine that there's a whole lot of pressure on poetry. You know, I could imagine there's a lot of sports being on, like guys are pressing each other on the basketball court or you know, band competitions or something. How does a young man get into poetry?
It's funny, man, you know, because I'm glad you're asking these questions, because I haven't given it a whole lot of thought. But I think initially it was rap, you know. It was you know, the hip hop and music. And one thing that I was particularly drawn to was lyrics. Like, I love wordplay. All of that is in rap. And so I think where the fork in the road comes was, you know, how real you can be with yourself. And I think there's a lot of falsehood in like current rap, trying to portray an image for yourself. And when it becomes real, and when it becomes not about just rhyming, but really communicating a message, I think that's where the fork in the road, and that's what I was really drawn to. You know,
people want to get more information. They want to they want to book you for the next bar mitzvah. Where do they go? What do they do?
They go to ShawnWelcome.com. excuse me. ShawnWelcome.com.
Shawn, what a kick. Thank you for putting up with me. Okay. Thank you for putting up with me. Listen for me on 630 KHOW. Tell a friend about the Independence Institute. Check us out online, independenceinstitute.org. And we'll see you next week.